What's going on, guys? It was Buffalo Bob, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard by now. If you're a Bills fan and you haven't heard the news, you've probably been living under a rock. So, Stefon Diggs finally gets traded, and it's just been a massive distraction on the team within the last couple of years, and finally is the day that we can officially say it's over with and all that jazz. So let's talk about the trade. So the Buffalo Bills have traded four-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans, along with a 2024 sixth-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick, are going to the Houston Texans. In exchange, the Bills are getting a 2025 second-round pick, which originally belonged to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I've heard a ton of mixed feelings about the deal, and obviously, I haven't even expressed my feelings on the deal just yet until now. I look at it from this perspective. I don't get attached to players. No matter it's hockey, baseball, football. Doesn't matter. I don't get attached to players because if you get attached to a player, then you have feelings for them, and then it becomes an emotional cloud, and it just clouds your judgment based on what's happening financially and all that jazz. So, at this stage where the Bills are at right now, it was very abundantly clear that Stefon Diggs has been wanting out for a while. And I would probably say, since this game. Yeah, that game where everybody thought everything was fine afterwards, 9 months beforehand. So, yeah, it was just, the game against the Bengals in the AFC divisional round a couple years ago, I think was the moment where everything just went down to shit. So, it was reported this morning that obviously the Diggs trade got approved, and Brandon Beane had a press conference, and he basically explained his side of the story, saying, listen, we have big plans coming up. And do we feel like we're a better team now? Absolutely not, but we will do something. So that gives me a boost of confidence. And I fully expect Brandon Beane to do his magic like he does every year, where he debbies down on their options, and then yet, boom, he does something crazy. It's just been a trend with him for the last couple of years. But what this does for the Bills is it relieves them of $19 million in cap going into 2025. And on top of all that, they're going to have to eat up to $31 million in dead cap. Now, that's only for a minimum 3 years. So it's not like they're doing it for like 10 years, like what the Broncos are doing, or whatever the number is for Russell Wilson, because they are eating $85 million compared to the Bills. And the other thing that a lot of people are really benefiting about is, like, why didn't the Bills get more than they should have? I agree to an extent that they should have gotten more for him, but who was going to take on that contract? And the fact that the Bills were willing to get rid of him and they're willing to take on that cap hit of $31 million, that speaks volume about the team. It really does. Not the team itself, but Stefon Diggs. Now, granted, I want to just say something very abundantly clear. I don't take that trade that happened 4 years ago for granted, because at that time, no one really knew if Josh Allen was going to be a budding superstar. I was also one of the original people, because I deleted the video many years ago, I had a reaction video where I said I didn't want Josh Allen to be on the Bills, and sure enough, he ate my words. So, yeah, and then the next thing you know, they didn't have a number one wide receiver at the time when they played the Texans in the playoffs, so they made that big deal with Minnesota at the time to get Diggs, and he's been with the Bills for 4 years, and every single year that they've been in the playoffs with this guy, one of them was in the conference championship game, the AFC championship game against the Chiefs, and the other 3 times that they've been there, we're all against KC. So the mindset, at least from what I'm thinking, is if the Bills want to get over the hump and compete with teams like Kansas City, Houston, now that they're coming up on the horizon, the Jets made moves, the Dolphins made moves, so the Jaguars made moves. So a lot of AFC teams are looking upon as contenders in quotation, because this is what the media does, but everyone's going to undermine the Bills now because Diggs is gone. Honestly, you could look at this in any direction. On one hand, you could say, oh, the Bills are screwed. This is one of the worst contracts they could have given. Well, let's not pretend that Stefon Diggs isn't a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Because before he came to the Bills, he had no nominations for the Pro Bowl at all. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just, a compilation of the Super Bowl in their resume. But Diggy, though, he was a great receiver for Josh Allen. He was a big part of his development within the 4 years. But I think at this point, Josh is fully grown up at this point. It's year 7 for him coming up. So for Josh, I think for him to take that next toll on the team, I think it's going to really benefit the Bills. Because if I remember reading it correctly, yes, the Bills are eating $31 million on the cap, but they've also relieved themselves $19 million for next season in 2025. So Brandon Beane is a competitive guy, as he puts it himself, and he wants to stack up the cap and stack up the picks to keep the Bills in the competition for years to come. Now, do I think that this could be a mistake? Yeah, I think so, but at the same time, you have to look at it from his perspective. Like, nobody really knows what happened behind the scenes, but as far as me being a Diggs fan and an Allen fan all at the same time, the two of them just weren't clicking anymore. And it was just unfixable, whatever was going on behind the scenes. And you can't go back to that at that point. So you have to kind of just think to yourself, well, if the Bills were willing to eat up that $31 million just to get rid of him and then get a decent return for him, was Josh Allen aware of all this? The answer is no. He was not aware of it. He was told in advance by Beane that, yes, they were planning to trade him at some point, but they just didn't know when. Until today, of course. And then it was also said that Beane also got calls from other teams. And the Texans were probably the most interested in his service. But the fact that the Bills even got a second-round pick for him compared to other teams, let's say, for example, the Bears, they gave up a fourth-round pick for Keenan Allen. A couple of years ago, the Cowboys, they got a fifth for Amari Cooper. And then recently, the Steelers, they gave up a sixth-round pick to get Justin Fields. Different position, but same idea. But to say that the Bills should have got more, I feel like is just really taking it for gratitude. Because a 30-year-old who's going to be on the verge of decline, that's a big boost. Because then it leads to the question, okay, the Bills don't have a number 1 wide receiver now. What do you do? Do you double dip in the draft? Do you trade up? Do you trade for a sure thing? Because that's what it seems like the direction is going to be. Because there's been a shit ton of rumors about what exactly the Bills were going to do leading up to that point. So my thinking is they can use the first-round pick and next year's first-round pick to get a guy like maybe Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco 49ers. I think he would be a stellar player. He wants a new contract, and the 49ers are just not willing to pay him. T. Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals is another option. He wants to be paid. He requested a trade, so this makes perfect sense. And then there's guys in the draft that you could possibly draft. Like, for example, you could draft Adonai Mitchell, who is a top-notch prospect wide receiver in the first round out of Texas. And then you have guys like Keon Coleman out of Florida State. And then you also have guys like Ladd McKinsky from Georgia. He's another one that's a possibility. Xavier Legette is another one from South Carolina. So there's a lot of guys that are available. But the one I've commonly heard the most, not that I think it's going to happen, so don't take my word for it, is Malik Neighbors out of LSU. He's been brought up a lot in the last 12 hours, probably since like 11 a.m. or maybe 12 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So this trade happened while I was working, so I didn't really have enough time to really think about it until I actually got home from lunch because, I was on a time crunch or whatever. I spoke to my wife, and she's like, though they need a number 1 wide receiver. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. So there's a lot of benefits the Bills have to do here. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Bills were aggressive at the draft. I wouldn't be shocked if they traded up. I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and got themselves a solid tier guy that's in the range of the age of 23 to 26, maybe 27 at minimum. Like guys like Higgins, like I mentioned before, and then Brandon Ayuk. I don't really know what's going to happen, but at this point, the Bills desperately need a number 1 wide receiver because you can't tell me with a straight face that you're going to be going into the 2024 campaign with James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins, and then whoever else they bring in. Because you lose Gabe Davis to Jacksonville, fine, whatever, cool. Nobody gives a shit about Gabe Davis. He's gone. I'm fine with losing him. But then you trade Stefon Diggs out of left field. It's like, I would have been fine with it. Like, here's the thing. I wanted the Bills to keep Diggs. I really did. I wanted them to keep Stefon Diggs and then let his contract expire in less than a year and a half, 2 years. And people were speculating to me like, oh, he might not be on the team next year. I'm like, he's got a big contract. He's not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, boom, I got slapped across the face by Adam Schefter on my phone. I got a notification on my watch. Again, while I was working, I was attempting a job at the time. And then the next thing you know, I get the note. I'm like, are you shitting me? And I thought it was a prank. So I had to go back and say, are you sure it's not April Fool's Day? So I had to go on Twitter and whatever, because that's where I get most of my information from anyway. And Adam Schefter comes up, and Ian Rappaport comes out. It's like, oh my God, this thing is real. So there's a lot of factors about this trade. It depends, I guess, who you really talk to. Because there's people who have very strong opinions about Diggs, saying, oh, he's a caliber player. Why are they doing it? It doesn't make any sense. And there's some that said, you know what? He can leave. He can fuck off tomorrow, whatever. It doesn't matter. He's a diva. He can be gone. Now, yes, he is a diva. We can agree on to that extent now that he's gone. So the last couple of years has just been nothing but defending the guy. Nothing but just saying, oh, he's a diva. He's a team guy. He's passionate, whatever. But now that he's gone, the momentum has shifted very drastically. Now, it's not to say that I don't like Stefon Diggs. I think he's an incredible wide receiver. But the problem that the Bills ran into within the last couple of years is he doesn't come up clutch. And then he whines and bitches and say, give me the ball, or I'm going to request a trade. And it was always about making Steph happy. That was the big factor about this core. It was about keeping him happy and Josh Allen happy. Josh Allen was always a pro. He always complimented, Stefon Diggs. And then you have Stefon Diggs trashing Josh Allen on Twitter. And there was one that I think that really triggered the Bills front office. And somebody asked him, oh, would Stefon Diggs be the beneficent of Josh Allen's success? And do you think he would be the same without him? You don't really need to look that deep, because the Bills have already shown with Josh Allen that he can succeed without Stefon Diggs, because he was gone for the good portion of the year, at least towards the second half, probably around the time before I left for Cincinnati, before I wrote the 32, was I think by week 7 is where things really went downhill for Stefon Diggs. And then you have guys like Khalil Shakir who came up. Gabe Davis came up for a little while, even though he's not a number one. So there's a lot of factors about this whole ordeal. So I think the direction, or at least the sense, is that the Bills want to not only get younger, and not only do they want to have money for the future, but they also want to be competitive for the time being. So I don't have an issue with the deal in general. I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I'm just surprised, if that makes the case. So generally, though, I'll miss Stefon Diggs. I will forever cherish the memories that he's had in Buffalo for the last 4 years. But just thinking back on it, this catch was the last big moment in his tenure with the Bills. It's kind of sad. It's a pretty shitty way of going. So I guess, we'll see if he benefits that in Houston, because the Texans in general, they get a good receiver all around, but they better hope that he doesn't turn into a prima donna, because then it's going to be a real big problem in Houston. So he's all yours, Houston. He's your problem now. But in terms of that, thank you, Stefon, for the last 4 years. Thank you for representing the red, white, and blue. Thank you for representing the Bills Mafia. It means the world to us, and, best of luck in Houston. So with that being said, let me guys know in the comment section down below. Do you like the deal? Do you not like the deal? Do you think the Bills are going to regret trading Diggs? Do you think this is going to benefit them? A blessing in disguise, even? So I guess, from that standpoint, we'll see what happens in the future. Let's see what the Bills do from here on out. So with that being said, I'll talk to you guys later, and I will see you during the draft.